Hi, this is Jack Howard, and you're listening to Retrospectives with John Broughton on 3SER Casey Radio.
Since the last time we spoke, you also released a memoir.
Yeah, look, it's been a busy few years. I don't know what it was really. I kind of came back I've had that Oils tour, the Midnight Oil tour, the Great Circle tour in 2017, and I think I've just been a bit kind of energized musically. I don't think because of that, but just there's just been a lot to do, and kind of coming into lockdown, I guess a lot of people have just given birth to COVID baby albums. There's an awful lot of them out there. From Ash Davies and Matt Walker and Rob Snarsky, a couple of which I've been involved with myself. I played on Ash's and Rob's, and there's kind of a lot going on out there.
How'd you find that experience though, writing the memoir, going back over your life and career in that reflective mode?
Oh, look, it was pretty interesting actually, because I've actually kept a whole pile of old journals and lots. And my mum had, God bless her, she'd kind of kept all the old Ram magazines and Jude magazines. At any time there was a minutest mention of hunters or anything I did, she'd hang on to it. So almost like, the age EG listings, with something in there, or, front cover of a Rolling Stone or whatever, she hung on to all of them. So it was a good opportunity to kind of go through a lot of that old stuff. So it was very handy because I've managed to kind of have at least a lot of names and dates in the right place. Yeah. Even if, there's still lots of things open to interpretation. It's kind of like it at least fixed a few things in, like I say, in time and place. And then all the old journals, I mean, a lot of them are like very cringeworthy to read because there's just vast amounts of old, turgid relationship stuff that it's just like, oh my God, I'm just reading it. It's just like, oh, I suppose it's good. I wrote all this down at one point, but it's never going to see the light of day. But again, amidst all of that, there was a lot of interesting stuff. There was a lot of, I kept a big journal during the Oils tour when we toured with them in 1990, which was a little bit of, I suppose, of a crisis time for hunters as well. It's, we're between the point when we were starting to have a serious crack overseas, and then, a couple of years after that Oils tour, we kind of just, I won't say retreated into ourselves a little bit, but we just, we're like, okay, well, we're doing really well at home and we can just kind of keep doing this. And families were, appearing on the horizon, and it just kind of got harder and harder to, justify those long tours overseas. I remember, kind of, we kind of had discussions, of I guess the role models for that kind of thing for success overseas, and we always talked about NXS, who pretty much lived in America for 9 months of the year. Very different prospect, much more commercial prospect than we ever were. But the idea of having to do that, I don't think really appealed to anybody. So we kind of gave it a red hot go, as they say, but. And still, funnily enough, a lot of people do remember us over there. Like when I did the recent Oils tour, that, lots and lots and lots of old Hunters fans, appeared out of the woodwork and had lots of conversations about people remembering seeing us overseas, which was kind of nice, because it's a little bit of a, it feels like a long time ago, now.
I saw you described in the promotion for this new album as being one of the great quiet achievers in Australian music. Does that label sit well with you, or would you like to be known for making a bit more noise?
Oh, good question. Well, that was a quote of Jeff Jenkins, and it's I've used it in promos quite a bit. Oh, look, I kind of don't mind it. I guess I've battled a little bit with not being able to kind of, I guess, command the same kind of, not fame. Fame's the wrong word, but just being able to command the same kind of interest, I guess, as I guess the lead singer of all the big bands. Because if you look back at all the bands of the 80s, and all the singers from all of those bands, from Mark Seymour to James Rain to, Ross Wilson and all those Joe Camilleri's, they've kind of, by dint of being the lead singer, that they've automatically command that bigger attention. I guess at times I've I've kind of craved that a little bit because, you know, I've kind of kept putting things out. Having said that, I've never, and this sounds a bit odd, but I've never really had, I don't know, infrastructure in place. I've never had management, and I've never had an agency, you know, for all of this. So I haven't had somebody else looking after those nuts and bolts of you know, getting me on tours, getting me on bills, getting me on festivals, things like that. It's all been a little bit kind of up to me. You know, I've got a great band, you know, and the music's great quality, and I can sing and blah blah blah. But I've never had that structure in place to, I guess, take advantage of it. Having said that, I mean, maybe there's a reason for that. I don't know. You know, I mean, I like the music that I've made, and the band that I've got is fantastic, and it's kind of reached a point. I mean, I do have an absolute full-time job as well through the day. So, you know, my you know, I suppose my grander plans would be limited a little bit anyway. But yeah, I look at it's probably been frustrating at times in the past, but I don't find it so much now. I'm probably a little more content. I mean, I'm older, you know, and all the rest of it. And
as you suggest, the big plus side, obviously, you've been able to make the records that you want to make and be happy with.
Yeah, that's yeah. Look, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And you know, I've kind of got a very, very simple. I'm looking at it right now. It's an iMac, a microphone, and an audio interface, and that's pretty much my studio. And I've managed to make, you know, three, four, five really, you know, good records that I'm really happy with. You know, a smaller EP, Passing Parade, as well as these kind of two light heavyweight electronica kind of albums. So it's you know, I've always just had the pleasure of tinkering and seeing what comes out of it as well.
So was there always going to be a light heavyweight too, or did it take lockdown to bring that about?
Well, look, I was thinking about this the other day, because at the start of lockdown, I think, like a lot of artists, it was almost a novelty. You know, it was so different, and it was such a complete paradigm shift, if you like, in the way everybody operated, that even, you know, I guess the consequences of just the length of time that everybody was going to be out of their trade hadn't dawned, you know. So it was that first period was a little bit like I won't say a honeymoon, but it was you know, everybody was energized. You know, everyone got into streaming, everyone was doing, you know, lots and lots of that, and I started just making these very kind of instant videos and Friday Flugel things that I'd put up on Instagram, and again, those were just a lot of beats that I'd muck around with and get up as really quickly, and most of this record, I think, kind of started there. So it would just be, you know, grooves of some sort, and as it went along, I thought, oh well, actually, there's probably a record's worth here. A couple of tracks that I kind of had laying around, but no, most of it really kind of came out of that. I mean, the first one, Light Heavyweight, came out of that world tour on the Oils, because I took my laptop along, and it was a funny kind of role for me in the Oils, because I was like up on stage and in the band, but the rest of the time I was really left to my own devices. You know, I mean, unlike a Hunters tour, I was not involved in band meetings or publicity or anything else. You know, so I was just really just twiddling my thumbs an awful lot in a hotel room, go see the sights, you know, the towns. I had a lot to do that, but I just had a lot of time to actually sit down and get on the computer and I was just using GarageBand and just putting together grooves and some of the trumpet I actually recorded, you know, that made it onto the record. I just recorded straight into my laptop, like literally into the laptop mic, and then I kind of messed it up a little bit, you know, just fuzzed it up a little bit when I went to do it properly. But I didn't replace them. I kind of kept all of that stuff. So, and yeah, look, eventually the Light Heavyweight 2 was, I thought, oh, well, that's a nice concept, you know, that I've got this first one. And I thought of the whole Light Heavyweight name as a little bit of almost like an alias, you know, like another name for me, and a kind of different kind of thing that I was doing. It was like Light Heavyweight, you know, like almost like a rapper's, not like a rapper's name, but, you know, like just another way to present myself, I guess.
Yeah, a moniker to work under.
Yeah.
Were there any specific artist albums or genres of music that served as the initial inspiration for this record, or do you see it as purely an extension of Light Heavyweight 1?
Oh, look, I'd say it's purely an extension. It feels a little, maybe a bit more assured. But also a little darker, I think, as well. Probably just because of the mood of the time as well. Look, I try and think of artists that are like this. I mean, there's a lot of electronica kind of artists that I like. I guess moody are probably less. Not the super successful ones, but I mean people like Gorillaz are successful, and some of it reminds me of a Gorillaz kind of vibe sometimes, or LCD Sound System, or Dark Side, or those kind of classic, almost like jamming electronica bands rather than commercial electronica, if you know what I mean. I don't know if that makes sense, but. And look, I mean, they're a nice vehicle. Look, it's funny enough, I run bands I teach full time, and I run bands at school, like young jazz ensembles. And I've been doing it for about 20 years at the school that I teach at. And we often do exactly the same thing. We'll just kind of, I'll get someone in the band to start up a groove, and we'll just kind of work around it and make stuff up. And we've ended up, I've got a chart book of about 20 to 30 charts that the band's written over the years. But it's found that on a very, very similar principle of just, finding a good groove and then just kind of layering up, just adding layers and hopefully making something musical. There are an awful lot of happy accidents in there. It's not very planned, I have to say. There are bits where a groove stops and a melody starts, and it's like there's nothing planned about it. And I go, oh, that's really good. And I just kind of keep those happy accidents.
So being in lockdown at the time, not having anywhere to go and having a lot of time at home to spend, did it open up time to really refine the finished product more so than you would normally?
Yeah, look, I spent a long time on it, I have to say, probably too long in the end. I started to really just, probably like lots of artists, the more time I spent with it, the more self-doubt I had about it. And there's a couple of tracks on there that I've still kind of gone back and thought, I've got to remix that, and I've got to fix that, and I've got to fix that, and maybe put out an alternate version of it. So there probably was the time on the hands factor. But look, I guess I've been doing my own thing for a long time. So I guess I'd had the plan to come out of it once I come out of lockdown and try and actually launch it this year. And get it out and about. Lockdown was obviously enormously hard for everybody. But we live in a nice part of the world. We live by the beach, so the beach was within our 5K radius. Ackland Street was within our 5K radius. So it was and in fact, a lot of the songs I could almost term 5K radius songs, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Like
there's one on there called Elwood Canal, there's Chicholina, there's Ruskin Street where we live, there's Grey Street just up the hill. It was a kind of bit of a conceit, I think after the fact a little bit. But I mean, I feel like there's a bit of a relationship between the music and the setting as well. Again, one of those kind of happy accident relationships that like I called the track on there Elwood Canal, and I didn't have Elwood Canal in mind when I wrote it, but once I named it Elwood Canal, it's like, and I've made a video for it. I was like, that actually all fits together really nicely. So, it's serendipitous, I suppose, maybe.
That's the instrumental track, Elwood Canal. I do love that video that you did with it. It's a perfect compliment to the track. Tell us about putting that together. Oh,
well, look, I've got an iPhone, like most people, and I've just kind of done a lot with it over this COVID break. I've made a lot of videos, and I guess learned how to edit together in Final Cut Pro pretty quickly. And also the other nice thing was that my son had a gimbal, which is like a Steadicam, and so I used that making the video. And just really, the Elwood Canal's a beautiful part of Elwood, and especially at dusk, it's just gorgeous, and it instills kind of peace of mind when you wander around there. You can walk all the way from the down near Ostomy Park all the way down to the beach, and they actually open straight into the beach, so it's quite special in a lot of ways. It's a great thing to have on our doorstep and within the 5K radius, and certainly my wife and I are out and walking in that vicinity very often. So it's good. Yeah, look, the video worked out pretty nicely actually, and I included some words which were just fairly random. No, they were not to do with the record. They were in fact to do with just something just a little reflective thing I'd written about my parents and the end of their life in nursing homes and things. It was a little bit based on that. But that's people have to watch the video to actually spot that.
So I'm assuming the street scene on the album cover art is a local scene as well.
I can see it from here when I look out my front window.
Looking out my front door.
Yeah. Well, the cover of Lighteavyweight is basically leaving Australia to fly to Brazil. So that's a great shot of Sydney. So it's I guess it's the much more local version. Here we are, we're stuck at home. The first one was jetting off to far-flung places around the world.
So I'm assuming by this you'd be a strong believer that your surrounding environment, it can certainly have a direct influence over the music you're creating.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think even more so. I remember hearing kind of lots of things on people talking on the radio, and it's common enough. I don't, it's not like it's unique to me, but people getting much more in touch with their local environments. That they go and looking at the plants down the street and the birds in the trees that they'd never noticed before. Seeing the streetscapes. The houses are just around the corner rather than you're just watching TV or you're commuting to work back and forth, etc. And all the rebirth of local shopping strips and things like that. So I guess it's kind of certainly seeped into the music as well. And I mean, I've got a kind of long history of just playing locally in the area as well, from pure pop records to currently George Lane to a long stint at the Dogs Bar, long stint at the Elwood RSL back in the day, playing at Mimo regularly, and even back to Hunters playing Seaview Ballroom and the Palais and the Venue and all those kind of places. Pretty much everywhere I just mentioned is still within the 5K radius. So it's certainly heavily influenced not just this record, but a lot of my music over the years.
And I see on top of this, you're also releasing a Lighteavyweight one as a hard copy this time, which it wasn't originally.
No. Well, I put it out on vinyl for the first one, and quite a lot of people. In fact, Basement Discs were like really disappointed. They said, "Oh, we actually sell lots of CDs." I was like, "Oh," and they've always been good supporters down there. And look, I got to say, it was a little bit fortuitous because I hadn't planned on it, but Implant Media, where I get my vinyl done, had a little bonus offer of 100 CDs, and you could have 100 CDs of whatever you wanted. So I could have done a compilation greatest hits CD, which I might even think about in the future if I ever get to that scenario again. But I just thought, well, here's an opportunity to actually whack the original Lighteavyweight on the same disc, and so people who were after that on CD originally can get it there as well. So that actually worked out pretty well.
Plenty of local references on the album, as we've mentioned. Also a song for the MCG. Can you talk us through that one?
Yeah, I guess it's not strictly about the MCG. I'm a member of the MCC, but
okay.
I feel like I'm a member of the MCC a little bit by default because I grew up, northwest out near Broadmeadows. My dad was my dad was a massive Carlton supporter, and so am I. And he coached footy and everything, very involved in football, but never anywhere near, the hallowed halls of, the kind of the private school scene of the MCC or whatever, and every time I kind of go there, and I often go to the footy on my own, I'm quite happy just, going on my own, and I just look at all these, well, I kind of described them in the song a little bit, it's kind of all the private schoolboys kind of, and I'm not saying too much about that because I went to school at a private school and I teach at private school, but I always feel like a fish out of water when I go there.
Yeah.
I feel so not ill at ease so much as just, very, very apart from that scene. Everyone's there and kind of glad handing and smashing back for beers and, and they're all mates and everything. And I don't really feel part of that scene. So I guess that's what that song is about. And I love the MCG. The MCG is such an amazing place to go to.
Oh, it sure is. Heading there tomorrow night myself.
You Tigers?
I'm a Tiger, yeah.
Okay, well, I might get there on Friday night, but I think we're actually going to see Black Cab play at Pure Pop at Rocksteady Records on Friday night.
Oh, wow.
Which will be pretty cool.
Talk us through some of the other players on the album that are contributing here.
Look, I guess a little bit like the first album, it was kind of mostly me, but I just felt not the need so much. It's just it felt like maybe a bit of extra colour. Certainly the need for perhaps some rhythm guitar or something like that, or some electric guitar in a couple of tracks. So Barry Palmer is long-time Hunters guitarist. He joined Hunters. We still call him the new boy. He joined in '87, and he played with all sorts of amazing bands. He was very involved with Chris Wilson and Harum Scarum back in the day, and had his own very successful band Dead Star alongside the same time as Hunters. And we've been seeing a lot of each other because the Hunters have been touring, doing the Red Hot Summer Tour through the first part of this year, pretty much from February up till mid-May. We've been on the road. Well, when I say on the road, we fly out on the weekend, go play somewhere, and then fly back and go back to work. But and Barry's an amazing guitarist. He's very kind of angular and spontaneous, if you know what I mean. He's even with Hunters, which is very much a kind of, for most of us, a kind of a part-playing band, if you know what I mean. We've kind of got our thing that we do in the songs, and we do that, and everyone loves it. But, it's not like we're doing brand new stuff every night, whereas Barry will still, I guess he gets a lot of solos, and he'll always be, trying something out. So, and I love, in fact, on that track, the MCG, he did some really, odd and almost soundscapey stuff, which I've shaped a little bit and done a bit of work on, and it sounds pretty special, I think, at the start and at the end in particular. Ed Bates Ed Bates is just a magician. He kind of joined my band back in about 2007-8, back when I was still kind of had the earlier versions of, I guess, my Long Lost Brothers band, and played on records from my lucky day on. And he's played, he was in the sports, he's probably his most famous early thing was the sports, but he's played, again, with just everybody and anybody, and he's got this pedal steel sound and approach to the pedal steel that's just almost like I won't say a synth, but it's just he weaves it like a soundscape through it. It's not like a country. I mean, he can do country stylings on pedal steel, but it's more just these beautiful soundscapes that he brings. And in fact, I just send them the tracks to him, and he does them at home because he's very well versed and actually, teaches all of that stuff as well in terms of production out. And he used to teach out at Box Hill doing that. Paul Williamson, I've got Paul Williamson in there, who's one of Melbourne's great sax players. He was actually he was over my place doing a session for something else, and I just said, "Oh, do you mind, playing a bit on this track as well?" So he's there on just one horn riff on one of the songs. Play that song again, but it's nice to have him there. And the other one that's been really exciting to have on is my wife, Fiona Leonard, she's a naturopath, and she used to be a photographer and very involved in the arts and very involved in all the kind of music scene around Melbourne. But she's not a musician, and she doesn't really do it anymore, but she sings beautifully. And of course, being in lockdown, it was like, hey, come and sing on this one. Come and sing on this one. So she ended up singing on about 4 of the songs, and it's just, works beautifully. She's got a beautiful kind of deep voice, and that was a really nice surprise element on the record as well, which I was very happy. Yeah,
that was a great result. Your voices blend so well together.
Yeah, I know. So thanks. I'm very pleased about that aspect. Now I've got to try and twist around to do it live when we actually get around to doing it live. Mind you, she's no introvert, so I'm sure she'll be happy to get up and have a sing and a dance.
Oh, good. So very much an independent release, and I've been enjoying seeing your Facebook posts, popping into various record stores, dropping off copies of the album. So it's really been hands-on for you. I guess that must make you feel even more closely connected to the product than it would normally if it was all left in the hands of a label.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. There was a time that MGM did some distribution from up in Sydney, But even I think that kind of avenue is probably not available, well, certainly not to me anymore. And I've had a few cracks at it trying to get a record company involved, but I just couldn't be bothered in the end now. And it's a bit hard to distribute it nationally, I've got to say. So it's really just out to the people that I know in Melbourne. I mean, postage is so goddamn high at the moment to send anything like that I haven't really got an option of getting it up to Sydney or anywhere else. But yeah, it is nice. It is nice, and it's kind of just nice to be in touch. I mean, I'm a regular at most of those shops that I've taken photos of. That they're my kind of favourite places to go and hang out. Rocksteady and Greville and Readings and all those places. I'm there all the time.
Another thing that's been keeping you busy is your Epic Brass shows. That they've really evolved into something quite special. Tell us about those.
Yeah, Epic Brass. I think there was a kind of time in Melbourne where it kind of like there was a bit of an opening up of the live scene, and it was based around the Flying Saucer Club, the Caravan Club, Mimo, and probably two or three others like that, where suddenly an older act, a kind of a heritage act, if you like, could play regularly and make a buck and get a crowd. So there was lots of people out there. Jeff is probably one, Jeff Lang, Rebecca Barnard, Billy Miller, and it was great. There were places to play. So a lot of people kind of put together another act besides just their own original stuff. So a lot of people were putting together some kind of tribute act or cover thing, or just a different take on it. You suddenly got all those Dylan shows and the Neil Young shows and all sorts of others, the songs of Leonard Cohen, etc., etc. And I put together a Bacharach one, which was fantastic, and that's still going. We started that down Little Pure Pop Records when we, they had this summer of classic albums where you'd play a record start to finish, and we did a Bacharach album, and that's kind of gone on. But then after that, I thought, I've got to think of another idea, and it just really suddenly occurred to me how many acts I'd been involved with over the years, besides Hunters, from the Oils, X, the Models, Painters and Dockers, quite a few others as well, all of whom I'd kind of contributed brass to or played live with for a while. And I thought, hang on, I can put a show together out of this. and really did a lot of research back through, the great horn-based bands of Australia, like the Laughing Clowns and the Saints.
Yeah.
But kind of, it was a little bit of a Sydney journey of discovery, because I came across, like the Jackson Code, which is Rob Snarsky's brother Mark Snarsky's band.
Yeah.
And Wet Taxis, Lewis Tillett, and two of the people who were in Epic Brass, Jason Kane and Penny, were both in Wet Taxis. So there are all these kind of like connections that ended up kind of tying up nicely. So just about everything in the show, there's kind of some kind of connection with, which is kind of actually really great. And certainly a lot of the Melbourne-based stuff, like Painters and Dockers, I played with them. X from Sydney, the horn section, Hunter's horn section, recorded with. We toured with the Oils, and the Models. We all played with the Models at one point. So a lot of excellent connections. And look, the shows are fantastic. It's a brilliant band. I've got two bass players, Steve Hadley and John Archer from Hunters. Ash Davies on drums. Great horn section, and then a kind of revolving door of guest singers. And we've had kind of people from Steve Kilby and Paul Dempsey, and Rob Snarsky was there at the last one, and who else? Deb Conway, Rob Hurst has played double drums. We've had Rob Hurst on double drums with Ash. It's pretty amazing. I mean, when I think about it, it's. I mean, I feel pretty blessed with the kind of people that I've managed to get to do it, and to manage the people who are actually in the band. It's a real super gun lineup, and it's just such amazing songs to play.
So with that, getting inside some really great established songs and well-known classics like that, as you have with Epic Brass and with the Baccarat shows, does it have some sort of positive influence on your own songwriting?
Oh, I hadn't thought about it from that aspect so much. I'm sure it has. I mean, in fact, Penny Eichinger, who was part of the band, wrote a really nice thing to me the other day, talking about how getting inside a lot of these songs has really taught her. It's been quite educational for her.
Yeah.
To get to know these songs and to I guess you got to pull them apart a little bit and then put them back together. I mean, I've had to do all the horn arrangements for them, so which it requires a lot of very concentrated listening, to be doing all of that, because it's just it's just by ear. I mean, there's no charts exist for any of this stuff. So look, it probably has. I mean, certainly probably not with Light Heavyweight so much, with this electronica thing, but with my band, I think it's kind of probably given me a little more scope for. What's the word I'm looking for? Epicness, I guess. Because with my own band, it's a great band. It's a rock and roll band, but I'm probably a little more modest with it. Whereas having done these like really big, like iconic songs, it's I've just tried to be a little more expansive with the band's sound and the band's size, I guess, as well. So that's certainly had an impact.
Now, you mentioned you're still teaching, of course, and lockdowns obviously brought about some positive results musically. How did teaching in lockdown go? Did you go down the remote learning path?
Oh, yeah, and it went on for way too long. I think the worst one, if you talk to most teachers, and in fact probably most people, the last one, lockdown 6, whenever it was, at the whatever it was, August, September last year, the third term last year was a shocker. Kids were over it, staff were over it. In fact, the school kind of wrote out to everybody and said, look, everyone's over it, so just go easy. Don't be demanding homework too much. Just, everyone's mental well-being is, on a little bit of a knife's edge here. So just be sensible. Use your common sense. Don't be demanding work and too much. But look, it kept on going. I mean, I won't say it had positives, but teaching one-on-one wasn't harmed too much, because, I mean, you couldn't play together because there was a lag between the two computers. But in terms of actually an effective lesson, I found the individual lessons effective, pretty positive, because you'd be listening very intently to the student, and you could see, because this sounds a bit strange, but they'd be facing me, whereas normally in a room I'm sitting side by side with a student.
Yeah.
So you could see in a lot more detail what was actually kind of going on technically as well. So that part of it was all right. Classroom teaching was not real flash. You kind of set work, and hopefully people were there and paying attention. But of course, probably like workplaces as well, you could check in and then wander off and pretend you were there.
Yeah. So what about this album live? Are there going to be any shows specifically devoted to Light Heavyweight, or how's it going to work?
You've asked that in a good day, because I probably won't say anything just yet, but I do have a plan in place. It's a tricky one. I launched Light Heavyweight a few years ago down at Mimo, and it was like any, it did pretty well. It didn't go through the roof, but we had about 150 there, and I had like these great visuals from Ash Wednesday, who used to be in the Models, who does all these fantastic, psychedelic kind of videos. And I used the laptop for part of it, and then I had a friend of mine, Amy, playing drums, and a couple of other people involved. I think I want to try and do it completely live this time.
Yeah.
Not that I've got anything against, using laptops in the show or anything like that. Like, I love Black Cab, and we went and saw User the other night down at George Lane, and they use laptops and visuals very, very effectively. And I've got no problem with that at all. But it's just, I think I want to kind of put together this really fantastic lineup, because I want to cover the horns, 2 keyboards, there's guitar in there. It kind of needs drums and percussion, bass. It's got a variety of, vocals and things. So I want to make it really something pretty special. And I've also just had you've probably seen these images that are popping up on Facebook. I've had a friend Miriam Adelaar do this really fantastic graphic design.
Oh, the posters, yeah.
Which is not actually the album cover, but the posters look just fantastic. They're really great. So I've kind of got in my head really trying to make it a bit of a special event and have visuals and put together this really great band and try and do it live. I mean, some of the loops are probably not supernatural, live drum loops, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. But having said that, I think it's still doable in the hands of good players to be able to not so much simulate it, but just kind of get the same energy and the same feeling.
Oh, that would be awesome. And that'd be a full show drawing material from both the light heavyweight.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Because there's probably about 4 light heavyweight songs that we do with my band, which is a traditional kind of rock band lineup: drums, bass, guitar, on pedal steel. And they work really, really well. But there are others on there, probably more of the soundscapey ones, with a bit more kind of twisted stuff going on in the loops that are quite hard to replicate, and they really need, they really need those particular voices to get them to work. So it's going to be a fair bit of brain work on my part to actually figure out exactly how to do it effectively. But I'm now that I've kind of, there is the potential to do it later in the year in about around November. I'm pretty excited to work towards that. It's going to be, I like a project, I like to have something to work towards.
Sounds like a plan. Sounds like a plan. Hey, Jack, congratulations. It's a fantastic album, a perfect follow-up to the first one, and we look forward to that project in November when it comes about. You've got some shows coming up, I'm sure, before then. I think you're at George Lane later this month.
Yeah, I'm playing at George Lane down at St Kilda on June 24th with my full band. And then I actually have, after that, it's a funny kind of year, I have long service leave.
Oh, wow.
And my wife and I got some pretty fancy overseas holidays planned. So I've got this George Lane show, and then there's a bit of a long service leave gap. And I'll keep working the record and blah, 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 but there's no shows until October. In fact, there are a few Hunter shows that have been rescheduled.
Oh, that's right. Due
to COVID and weather. So we've actually got another 3 or 4 for the start of October planned as well. And then after that, I plan on just kind of getting back into, I suppose, my normal gig life, getting back into doing band shows, light heavyweight shows, Epic Brass and Bacharach, and just kind of getting all of those wheels rolling in motion again later in the year.
Keep them busy.
Yes, keep them busy.
Fantastic. Thanks again, Jack. It's been great catching up with you again, and congratulations again on the record, and I'm sure it's going to do extremely well.
I hope so. And thanks again. Thanks for having me, John.
No problem. I'll be in touch and let you know all the on-air details too, in case you want to give that a bit of a push on your
absolutely.
socials.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
Good on you, Jack. All the best.
All right. See ya.
Bye-bye.